And now it's Little Italy podcast with Deborah Kobylt.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today on our Little Italy podcast. I'm your host, Deborah Kobylt, and I am just thrilled to welcome Christina Conte. You are the creator of Christina's Cucina, and you are here to talk to us about something that a lot of people might not know about. That would be the San Marzano DOP tomato. What does that mean? You're here to tell us that not all tomatoes, people, are created equal. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm really honored that you had me on. It's going to be a very informative show.
I've become obsessed with these particular tomatoes ever since you introduced them to me. You sent them to me. They happen to be in this can. But I want you to explain to people, what is the San Marzano DOP tomato? What makes them so delicious? Where do they grow in Italy? Could you tell our audience?
Sure. I think a lot of Americans are familiar with the name San Marzano, but the difference is these tomatoes are actually grown to be canned. Once they end up in the can and they have been grown in a specific region in Italy, it's in the Salerno area. So most people would know it's near Naples. There's only a specific region that they can be grown in. Once they're grown there, and according to the criteria that they have to be grown in, they are then transported. They're hand-picked. They're very strict about how these tomatoes are grown and canned. They're hand-picked. They're taken a very short distance, and then they're canned within hours. You can taste the difference in these tomatoes because of this. So did you want to ask about?
No, say that again. You can what? I didn't hear that. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Sorry. You can really taste the difference in these tomatoes because of where they're grown and how they're grown, and everything about this tomato is really special. So the DOP is designated area. It's DOP in Italian, but in English it's PDO. So it's protected designation of origin. So you know how champagne can only come from a certain area of France. It's the same thing with these tomatoes. And I think a lot of people don't know that.
Talk to me about this particular region. When did they first start growing these tomatoes there? And let's talk about the soil, how rich the soil is. Could you explain that to our viewers, please?
That's one of the things that makes them really special. So a lot of people think that tomatoes have been, since Roman times, they've been in Italy for, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, when in fact, the first tomatoes came from Peru in the late 1700s. So they haven't been in Italy that long. So these tomatoes were grown in this area, the San Marzano area. That's why they're named after the town of San Marzano, the region. And it's near Mount Vesuvius. So most people know Mount Vesuvius erupted, and there's all this volcanic ash that went into the ground. And that's what makes the area so rich in the soil. And obviously the climate is perfect for tomatoes, and they are just full of flavor, and they are non-acidic. That is, I think, for me, the most important part. They're sweet naturally. So when I see recipes for tomato sauce and there's like half a cup of sugar or even 2 tablespoons of sugar, I'm like, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to add sugar to something that's already sweet. So if you're using these really good tomatoes, and what I always say is, when you try these tomatoes, just open the can and taste it straight from the can, because you can actually eat them raw out of the can as is, and you will not make that sour pucker face that you will make when you taste other tomatoes that are very acidic. And, people always write and say on my website, I had somebody actually say, I feel like I've been lied to my entire life, because they used the San Marzano tomatoes, the San Marzano DOP tomatoes, for their pizza sauce. And the pizza sauce recipe that I've shared, it's not my recipe. it's the recipe that the pizzaioli use in Naples, where pizza was invented. So they're out of the can. They are not cooked. They're just a very, very few ingredients added, put on the pizza and cooked, and it is sublime. There's no other word.
To die for. How about that? I want you to know, you shipped me quite a few cans. Now you've got me obsessed, because I will just pop open the can, stick in a spoon. I'll eat the tomato whole. I'll eat the sauce. And my husband is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, no. You're supposed to do this. It's okay. And it's not even making its way to the table. Like, it's so delicious. It can't even make its way to the table or on top of my pasta, pizza, or whatever else we want to do with these tomatoes. Tell us some of the rest. Not exactly recipes, but tell us other than the pizza, right? Yeah, please.
Yeah. Essentially, any way that you would use canned tomatoes. Now, also in some ways that you would use fresh tomatoes. Like, you can make a spaghetti sauce from fresh tomatoes. But when we only have like a short growing season for tomatoes, during that time, and for me, I like to make bruschetta, caprese with fresh tomatoes. And the canned tomatoes that are the San Marzano DOP, and I will tell you the entire name that you want to look for when you look for this can of these special tomatoes. It's going to have a big long name, and you know, listeners don't need to remember this. There's two things that I say that's easy to remember. You look for the big long name. At the end, it says D.O.P, D.O.P in Italian. And then on the back, there are two seals. When you see those two seals and you see the D.O.P, that's when you know that they're the actual San Marzano tomatoes from the region. So what they will say on there is Pomodoro San Marzano dell'Agro, Sarnese-Nocerino DOP. It's super long, but that's what will be on the can. And there's not one brand. There's a lot of different companies that process these tomatoes in the manner that they're supposed to make them according to the consortium. And that's why they're allowed to put the seals and the DOP on there. That way you know what you're getting inside the can. Right.
The seal is what? Just the name, or is it a special like seal on it, or what?
There are two little seals. I believe one's yellow and red, and the other one I think is green, and it says San Marzano on the little seal. So that's the two. When you see the two seals, the name, the DOP. So the main thing is to look for DOP. And you know, DOP is not just for the tomatoes. DOP is for a lot of foods in Italy that are grown in a certain region, that are, you know, they are specifically made in a certain way. We had discussed the slow food movement. This all started when the tomatoes were basically grown, and I believe it was in the 70s, they started using machinery and getting more, you know, like streamlined, and we don't need people to pick them anymore. But it doesn't work with San Marzano tomatoes because they need to be hand-picked, because they ripen at different, you know, like the first ones will ripen, and there's more on the plant, and those won't ripen. So if you take them with a machine, they just take everything, and then you lose half the crop. So,
well, I like to say, talking about the slow food movement, right? We've always had the slow food movement since the beginning of time. It's just that the fast food movement got in the way. So now we're going back to the way. Yeah, we're going back to the way it's supposed to be. Really.
Exactly.
So I love it, but yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
5 stars on that, Deborah. That is exactly, because when and then, you know, here in LA a few years ago, it was starting to hear the farm to table, you know, movement, and getting, which is kind of like the same kind of thing. And I just thought, this is how my family, and basically, you know, all of Italy, all of our ancestors, this is what, and not just Italy, I mean, a lot of, you know, countries have done the same thing. But in the US, I think the fast food, it would just got so out of control that so many things went by the wayside as far as cooking and making things from scratch is just easier. You know, just grab a bunch of ingredients, processed foods, and dump them into a pot or something and turn it on and let them all meld. And in truth, cooking from scratch, when you use really good quality ingredients, you only need a handful of ingredients. Most of the Italian recipes on my site, I would say, have probably 5 ingredients or less. Because
no, isn't that, it's the way that my family did it, the way yours.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy to cook when you cook with really good ingredients, because you don't need to line up, 20 different ingredients and 10 spices and things like that, because the products that you're using have so much flavor. You actually don't want to cover those flavors up. So that's exactly how these tomatoes come in. That is the most important part of a pizza sauce, a tomato sauce, your lasagna, whatever it is you're making. When you have this, it's basically the star of the show, and people, they can taste it. They always, wow, how did you make this? I need your recipe. Well, it's not just the recipe, it's the quality of ingredients that makes a good resulting dish.
Now we can pick up this particular brand only at many of our stores here, right? You and I are in Southern California, but
it's easier
throughout
for
the
us,
US.
Yes. Well, you can always order them online. Everybody has access
course.
to them online. So when you're shopping, same thing, look for the DOP. You might be able to see the seals. Some online shops have the pictures of the back of the label and different things like that. But you're pretty much guaranteed it's the right thing if you see the big long name with the DOP. And once you start to buy them, you recognize the certain brands that are available in the US. There are some that are more available than not.
Right, and you can get them at some of your large grocery stores, right? Some smaller stores, some of the Italian markets. You just have to look, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would encourage everyone, when you're in your grocery store, take a look at the shelf and see what your options are. Mm-hmm. And when you see the San Marzano DOP tomatoes, the ones that you're always putting in your cart and you're just used to buying, compare that can side by side, one after another, like you do with, the spoon, and then let your taste buds decide. Don't take our word for it, right, Deborah?
Oh, definitely. And my fridge, I have a couple of cans open right now because I'm supposed to be cooking with them, and instead I'm eating them with a spoon. So like I said, thanks a lot. I just want to get back to the volcanic soil. It's the volcanic soil, right, that makes it so rich to grow, or gives it the taste, or all of the above? Like, can I grow anything?
I'm not a scientist, so I would assume both. I would assume both. And they really, these tomatoes, for some reason, a lot of products, vegetables, fruits, you can them and they lose their flavor.
Right.
These tomatoes, there's something about them. It actually increases their organoleptic properties. So they taste even stronger, better once they've been canned. The aroma, everything about them is just, they're perfect. The way they're shaped, perfect for the can. It's almost like they're made for the can.
Also tremendous nutritional value, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And one other tip that I can say is San Marzano DOP tomatoes will only ever be whole peeled tomatoes. So if you are buying some tomatoes and they're diced, guaranteed they're not San Marzano DOP. If they're puree, they're not. Now, you can take those whole peeled tomatoes and say your recipe calls for diced tomatoes. It takes, not even a minute to chop them up.
It makes you
make a puree with them. You can do whatever you need. Slices. So they're really adept at every recipe that they're needed for.
I mean, it makes you want to go right to the region and pick them yourself, right? I mean, it's really so interesting that so many people don't know about this authentic tomato only grown in one place, and you can only really get it in one place. It's actually very, very extraordinary. Let's talk a little bit about you and how you started Christina's Cucina, and a little bit about your background, if you would.
I was born in Scotland, and as Mariana was saying, that her family, there was a lot of families that moved to Argentina. My family, and there was a lot of Italians that actually moved to Scotland. So I grew up there until I was 9.5, and my dad and mom both from Lazio. My mother was born in a little town just outside of Cassino, and I don't know if you know Monte Cassino, a very famous place in World War II. And my father, although he was born in Scotland, his parents were born in the same region in Italy. My grandmother was born in Atina, and his father was born near where my mother was born. So there's the Scottish Italian, people that had gone there, and they all opened fish and chip shops and ice cream shops, pretty much. That was what.
Interesting.
So my dad.
I love that.
My dad had a fish and chip shop in Scotland, and actually, my parents moved to the U.S. in order to open an Italian restaurant with my dad's half brother. That didn't end up working, but we moved, and so we ended up staying in Michigan. My parents were actually still in Michigan. And after going to college in Michigan, I just decided I could not take I'm freezing right now. I guess it's the Italian blood. I just couldn't take the Michigan winters. And so, it ended up that I went to graduate school in San Diego, and I ended up getting married, and I've been in Los Angeles ever since. And the reason I started Christina's Cucina, I used to be a children's social worker. And after staying home to raise my kids until my son, who graduated from Loyola High School when he was 16 and went off to Georgetown, I was like, right, I've gotten one kid at home and I have time to go back to work. So my friends suggested I start a blog because they said, you have to do something with your food. And I didn't know anything about a blog or anything. And I just came home that night and I Googled how to start a blog, and it ended up saying, congratulations, your site is live in like 2 minutes. And I was like, no, it can't be live. I don't know what I'm doing. And I've been doing for 10 years. So I know it's 10 years now.
Some of the recipes are outstanding, like the one on the cover, if it's still there, about the custard. Oh my gosh. Some of it is just unbelievable. Some of the recipes there, I've never seen anywhere else. They're easy because they've got the right ingredients, just like you said. I do love it.
And step-by-step pictures.
Right. Yeah, beautiful pictures too. ChristinasCucina.com, right? That's how people will find it.
Correct. And Cucina, know that it means kitchen or cooking in Italian.
Right.
So, but other people might not.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for people who want to learn more about the tomatoes that we've discussed on our show, where should they go?
There is a site that will give you all the information that you need and that you could want. It's I love San Marzano DOP.com.
I love San Marzano DOP.com. People, it's really worth investigating this, right? There's different ways that you could make your pizzas and your pastas and anything else that you use a sauce, but try these. Just try them. And you're going to end up like me. You're going to get your spoon and you're going to keep your can in the fridge and you're going to be dipping into it every day. And you'll probably never go back. I mean, I'm so grateful that you introduced me to these tomatoes, Christina. I really am. I've learned quite a bit. And I love learning about the history as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And, when people find out about this, they tell their friends, they tell their relatives, they tell their hairdresser, they tell because they're so excited to discover, we've all discovered some product or something that a friend has said, hey, did you try such and such at Trader Joe's? And you go and you try it, and it's like life-changing. This is one of those products.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So thank you very much, Christina, for joining us. Christina Conte of Christina's Cucina. And please look up the website about the San Marzano DOP tomatoes. So much to learn there, so much to taste. I thank you so much for joining us today on our Little
Deborah.
Italy.
I really on our appreciate being here.
Yeah, like I said, I've learned so much. And as soon as I'm done, I'm headed to the refrigerator to eat some more. So again, you could find this show on all video and audio platforms, actually on Deborah Kobylt Live and Little Italy podcast. So you can find it on both platforms. Please encourage your friends to join us because we've got all kinds of interesting interviews, just like the one we just did with Christina. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Deborah Kobylt. And until next time, see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.